Welcome, everyone, to another edition of our interviews for the Hamburg Massacre commemoration event. This is the 150th anniversary of the Hamburg Massacre of 1876. My name is Melissa DeVelvis. I am a history professor at Augusta University, and we're looking forward to this talk. Y'all want to do some introductions of yourselves?
Thank you, Melissa. I'm Marsha Harris, and I have attended several Hamburg commemorations in relation to some research that I'm doing. And they're retired educator and want to know more about the history of this area. And one of those commemorations, I met Frederick Morton. And so he has some interesting information for us. Fred, would you introduce yourself?
Yes, ma'am. I'm Frederick Morton, born and raised in the North Augusta area. And I'm very familiar with the Hamburg area. My family's been there for 200 years in the North Augusta area, so I'm excited and I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Melissa, would you give us some background on the Hamburg area and the massacre, and then we'll see how Fred connects with that.
Yes. So in 1876, Hamburg, which is now by the Freedom Bridge, it is no longer an extant town. There was flooding in the 1920s and it moved up to the bluffs and now is Hamburg-Carrsville African American Heritage District. So that is the story of the location of Hamburg. It was a thriving town in 1876. However, during Reconstruction, the town was predominantly black. And what we see happening on the 4th of July is there's allegations that the road was blocked by the black militia when they were drilling. And then after they are called to answer for that, told to give up their weapons, even though this is the militia for the town. And on July 8th, we see the Hamburg Massacre, in which a white mob surrounded the black militia, rounded up several black men of the town, some of which had no connection to this militia. And right where the Freedom Bridge is now, actually, were pulled and executed. Ring of Death Circle is actually what it was called by one of the men who was... it was not Hamp Stevens, it was... Doc Adams, actually, his testimony about what happened that day, he called it the Dead Ring. And so this is an event called the Hamburg Massacre, and we try to remember and memorialize it today, and that legacy is not forgotten. The story of this town is not forgotten. And what we have here today is actually, we're going to talk to some descendants of the people, the victims of the Hamburg Massacre.
And so, Fred, who is your ancestor?
My ancestor is Pompey Curry, and he is the father of my great-grandmother.
And how is Pompey related to the Hamburg Massacre in Hamburg?
He was right in the middle of it. He was in the dead pool. He was listed on the militia. So he was hiding under the houses with everybody. So he was in the middle of that.
Well, how did you get this information? How did you learn about him?
Doing history, I began studying family history back in 1985, and my parents didn't talk a lot about it and that type thing. Kids were outside. They didn't bring up a lot of that around kids, but I found out most of it doing history.
What kind of research did you do?
I went to the National Archives in D.C. and the archives in Columbia. Here in Augusta, I came to different libraries and that type of thing.
Well, we'll ask you about what you found, and we want to know what Pompey was like before the massacre and what his involvement was during the massacre.
Yes, ma'am.
So what was he like?
From the earliest I see him, 1870 census, and then the militia rolls. He seems to be just a normal guy working at that time. I think he was farming at first, on the militia, just living normal life. He seems to have gotten married around 1872, somewhere in there, family. So just your regular everyday person trying to overcome years of slavery and that type thing, but just a regular guy.
Do you know where he lived when he was enslaved and how he got to Hamburg?
Earliest I see him that was Edgefield then, that area. Mm-hmm. But earliest I see him is Edgefield County. And I found no earlier records of where he grew up as a child, but it does say South Carolina. So I'm thinking he was from that area.
Well, in Hamburg, before the massacre, he farmed, and did he have other a livelihood?
I see where he had a store. So he was an entrepreneur, which speaks a lot, being so close or so just removed from slavery. He did have a store in Hamburg.
All right. Now I'm going to jump a minute and then come back to that.
Please. Okay.
What did he do as a result of the dead ring?
He was in the dead ring, and someone said that, hey, look, you better run because, you've been sort of looked at for a while, so they're definitely gonna, get you. So he ran, and what happened was they shot him in the leg, and he landed on the ground and played dead. And then later, he was able to get up and get away. And he was one of the persons who was able to finger everybody because he was firsthand witness. Okay.
You said that someone said, you've been looked at. What did that mean?
They had, having a store and everybody kind of hanging around there. He was known. Yeah. He was well known in the area. So,
what was his personality like?
From what I gather, after slavery, his personality was, I'm going to get mine now. I'm not going to get it in the sweet by and by any means necessary. I'm going to get it.
And what do you mean by I'm going to get mine?
It looked like if there was a deal to be made above board or below board, he would be one of the infamous characters in the family. Now, I don't know if this came from his viewpoint of, look, I've been done wrong all my life, and I'm trying to do well now with a wife and family, but things are just not, I'm not being treated well. So we'll have to go to plan B.
Okay, thank you. Before we go on, Melissa, can you tell us anything about the militia? Fred said that Pompey was in the militia. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. So one of the white men who was actually a Republican and therefore testified on behalf of the militia after the massacre said that the militia was so well drilled and so successful that was actually the problem for the local white Democrats, that they were so successful. These are Black men parading in arms. And at this point, military service and military valor, it was the high point of masculinity in America. And so this is, for many reasons, why Black soldiers during the Civil War said we deserve our citizenship because we did military service. And this is the way that we prove our manhood and that we can wield these weapons. And so in many ways, the fact that they were so well drilled and they were so successful and were led by a USCT veteran was a threat. And especially as you mentioned that if Mr. Curry he has a store, this kind of success is exactly what they wanted to, defeat in Hamburg. So very well drilled militia from what I've read. And so this was definitely a sign of his success.
Well, why was a militia needed?
So on one hand, there were, this is kind of their version of the National Guard. We don't quite have one yet. And so this would have been sanctioned by the state government. And so this is different than these militia clubs, these rifle groups that the white Democrats of the South had organized. But also, this is a time period where you see increasing political violence on the way to the 1876 election and violent resistance to Reconstruction. At this point, we've had the KKK trials in which people provided testimony to what happened with the Ku Klux Klan, and President Grant actually had to call in the U.S. troops to put down the KKK up in North South Carolina, up near York. And so, yes, it was on one hand just your standard kind of National Guard force, their version of that. And on the other hand, it was necessary for protection.
Okay, so did the men in the militia sign up? Did they volunteer for the militia?
Yes, all volunteer. Correct.
So this tells us something about Pompey, that he was in the militia, he volunteered for it, he knew something about why the militia was necessary.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm. So that speaks to his courage and to be in the militia, and I think for his concern for the community.
Most definitely.
Have you gathered anything else about his character, his values from some of the things that he did, even the testimony?
Marrying Jacob Bolo, which was his father-in-law, marrying Jacob Bolo's daughter. Jacob was outstanding and upstanding also in the community. I don't think he would have allowed just any old body to marry his daughter. So I'm reading into it that at some point he had, some character, some dignity and that type thing. And he just had a different way of displaying it. He was not a pushover at all.
Okay. What happened to Pompey after the massacre?
After the massacre, the best I can tell, he was fleeing for his life. He fled over and at some point ended up in Augusta, probably laying low for a year or so. And from what I do understand, that it put pressure on his marriage for sure. They ended up divorcing because in 1880, my great-grandmother is with her grandfather on the census. And Pompey, I want to say it was around 1877, remarried. So having to leave your family and run for your life, and your wife go back to her father, it did put some pressure on him. But from there, newspaper articles in the Augusta Chronicle and things like that, he still had that, I'm going to get mine because you owe me.
Okay.
So there are a few articles.
Well, I'll have to research that to find out what has been written about him.
Definitely.
What does your family say about him?
They're mostly going on what I have researched, because when I was growing up, if older folk were in the house talking, it was like, okay, you need to be outside. We didn't get to sit around. And a lot of stories, they wanted to project the future. They wanted us to grow up and be better then and take advantage of the opportunities that we have now that they didn't. A lot of the stories we just didn't get. They didn't linger on the bad days. So I didn't hear a lot about him growing up, but I grew up on his father-in-law's place. It was 33 acres that he bought.
How did he get the finances to buy that property?
Right after slavery, he stayed on as a sharecropper on the plantation. And then after he saved up a good bit, he bought it on time, and it was $200 for 33 acres, and he had to pay it off over time.
Now, is this in Edgefield or closer to Hamburg proper?
It was closer to Hamburg.
Closer to
It's
Hamburg.
right on I-20.
Oh, okay.
So, would that have been Aiken County at that time, as Aiken County was founded in 1871?
Yes. On
Right.
that part of 20, yes.
Yeah, it would have been.
Okay. Well, so his father-in-law bought the property,
Correct.
and did he farm on the property?
His father-in-law? Oh, definitely, yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes. I've seen
Okay.
his farm schedules.
Okay. So he prospered through his farming.
Oh, definitely, most definitely. Well respected in the area. Even his son taught college at, this would have been Pompey's brother-in-law, at Bettis Academy. So, well respected family in the area.
Do you remember his name?
Jacob Bowler. As a matter of fact, Mr. Gardner, who's here today, Mr. Gardner's great-grandfather signed my great-grandfather's will.
Oh, do you have that? Do you know where that is?
Oh, yes,
the
ma'am. I
document
have a
is?
copy. Yes, ma'am. I have a copy.
Ooh,
Okay.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
Well, with the commemoration, we are opening the museum for tours, and so it might be that you may have documents that we might get a copy of to make a display in the museum,
Yes, ma'am.
even if not for now, for later.
Definitely, definitely.
Uh-huh. Well, tell me about, is there any other descendant that you would like to share with us about?
Again, from that line, my dad's mother's side, there have been Tuskegee Airmen, there have been folk who have erred on both sides of the law. So we have a whole gamut. It's a tapestry. There were those you respected one way or another. So I've learned a great bit. I've learned who not to fool with and who to, it's just a lot of them, like teachers, bricklayer. My dad was a farmer and a very good farmer. He was also a butcher. But a number of teachers, a number of folk in the ministry, all the way back to the 1800s. So there's something to learn from everybody.
That's right. Well, my goodness, I'm just amazed. I'm just in awe of what you're saying, as it makes us want to know. We need to know about all of our family, and we love our family, even though we might not like all the things they do. So we learn what to do and what we shouldn't do, but we love them, and we look at the circumstances of which they lived.
Exactly.
That carries us to another dimension. We're not just looking at the people and what they did, but we're looking at the circumstances, and sometimes we make those circumstances good or bad, and sometimes I don't like to use the word victim, but sometimes we are a victim of our circumstances.
Yes, ma'am.
But what I feel that we're doing today is talking about the past, not to encourage the future, and the way we're doing it is not just for one family, your family as you're doing, but our talk encourages all who listen.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's just tremendous. It's so we never know what is going to come from the people who hear this interview and how they may impact the world.
I have a quick question, one historian to another. When Wayne started doing this kind of history, he was told to look at the signs and the monuments around the place where he's now going to live. And so he saw the Meriwether Monument, read that text and said, this ain't right. So you got into it through family history, correct? So when you first, did you know about Hamburg before this?
I did, but not to the extent of what my family played into. But I did know about Hamburg.
Okay, that's the question that's been really fascinating to me is when did you hear about Hamburg and what context did you hear about Hamburg? Because for so long it was called a riot, if it was mentioned at all. And so just the way that it was remembered, especially because in some ways history is written by the victors and the people who perpetuated this massacre went on to be in South Carolina government. And so they, of course, spoke of it as one thing. And so really pushing back against, which I think we have successfully achieved by 2026, against the narrative of it being some kind of riot in which the South was redeemed back to the white Southerners again. We've pushed about against that very well at this point, but I'm always interested in how people either knew about it or when they found out about it.
It was all positive that I heard about. It was about the church. It was about education. It was about the schools, and folk would go in wagon loads to attend the school down there. Providence Church was there. It was a positive experience. I didn't find out about the massacre till later. So what I originally heard was folk who had been, just out of slavery, and they were using what they had to make a better life for themselves. And it was encouraging to me. And I'm sure it'll be encouraging to other folk in the future to say, it doesn't matter where you come from. Mm-hmm. Use what you got.
Well, Melissa, you brought up some things. Let me see. Now, maybe I think we have alluded to it, but what was? Okay, let me go from my perspective. From my research, I find that the Hamburg Massacre, which started with the incident, was kind of a premeditated thing, not just what it was, but the principle of disruption was premeditated. I want to know, what was the Edgefield-Aiken County Democratic perspective on Hamburg before the massacre, and what happened afterwards?
Oh, okay. So yes, it was very much a plan to kind of start a fight and then cause violence. And they said this. This is not, we have their testimonies. And Ben Tillman, who went on to become a senator from South Carolina and also the governor, pretty much said this was to strike fear. This was for fear. This was to return things back to the status quo antebellum, in which white men were on top of it all. And white women happily wanted that position underneath them as well. Many of them were in favor of Reconstruction, and they talked a lot about Negro rule, and this is in quotes, Negro rule, which was this idea that South Carolina was being run by people who were inexperienced, people who were of a race that they considered inferior, and that this was a terrible thing. They were being helped by Northern Republicans coming down. They were helped by, if there was a white Southerner who supported them, they were called a scalawag, which is basically race traitor to them. And that this was, South Carolina was stuck under this and federal tyranny. And the only way to defeat it was through voter fraud and also through violence. And so Hamburg is just such at the epicenter and such an example of things that happened in so many different places. There's the Camellia Massacre in Georgia. There's what happened in Louisiana. which I'm blanking on, which is embarrassing. I'll put in the subtitles the name of the one I'm referring to.
Okay.
Colfax Massacre in Louisiana. And actually South Carolina, in their plan to subvert the vote in South Carolina, they took notes from Louisiana.
Okay. Was the Ellington riot connected?
Yes, the Ellington riot / massacre, those were a little bit more kind of, it came afterwards, but was a part of the greater plan. And if you look at the Senate testimony, they include Ellington when they talk about Hamburg and just kind of what's going on in that region. Did you look at Ellington at all? Or did you, actually not Ellington, did you look at the Senate records, the really big?
I did look at those records. They were very detailed, and I learned a lot. It helped to see both sides. It helped to see the thought process, because when you look at it at first, you don't necessarily realize how big of a scheme this was. But when you see it played out in the Senate records, like, wow, this was, here you have all these folk thriving, and the whole plan is to destroy it and to regain rule. So
I looked at a little bit of that, and one thing I saw was that the residents of Hamburg told about the massacre from one perspective, and the Democratic red shirts told it from another perspective, and it was like it was not, I'm going to say, what the red shirt said was a little, was distorted to me from what I have gathered really happened. And it seems that the story of the massacre has been told by the writers who were white. And so it's told from their perspective. And one thing that I like about this group is the commemoration team is made of white people and black people. And I think we're trying to tell the story as it really happened. And that's very important. But afterwards, there was a consequence of the voter fraud.
Yes, ma'am.
And it seems that the massacre was a political event through voter intimidation.
Exactly.
So that the Democrats could regain power and change back to the ways preceding Reconstruction. And a little bit later, perhaps we could have Melissa tell us more about Reconstruction, but during that time, we had the 13th Amendment during Reconstruction.
Right.
We had the 13th Amendment, which freed the slaves. And then we had the 14th Amendment, which made black people citizens. And the 15th Amendment, which gave black men the right to vote.
Right.
And so this was power for black people, because in this area, because there were more black people than white people.
Right.
And so that was a voting power. And the Democrats didn't want that to happen, didn't want to be overcome by black voting power. So we need to know more about Reconstruction, and we need to know more about what happened afterwards. But afterwards came the Jim Crow laws, which were in place for almost 100 years.
Oh, yes.
And so that was a great, really setback.
It really was.
I think it's a setback for mankind. I think as I think about it, we want justice for all. If we could do not who is in power, but who will be in a state to provide the best for all people. That's my hope.
Definitely.
That is my hope. Well, let's go back to Pompey Curry and what you learned from him to give you more hope.
I'm very proud of him because he's letting future generations know, stand and fight for what you believe in. Sometimes you may have to retreat. Sometimes you may have to duck and run, but have a plan. Don't let someone ride your back. Fight for what you believe in. There's an African proverb that says, and we all have heard this, that until you interview the lion, you only get the hunter side of the story. And we get their side of the story. We also get the perspective of the folk who were in there. But with Pompey's side of the story, I have to look at it through his eyes. And he was trying to provide for his family. And I get that now. Do what I got to do. Stand, vote, get out and be the best person I can, provide for my family, regardless of what's thrown at me. So there are a lot of lessons for, children and grandchildren and the future to look at is, here's someone who stood regardless of what was thrown at him.
Okay, well, let's talk to the young people. Let's talk to how should they prepare? How should young people who are in school prepare to be able to stand up for their rights, how should they prepare for the world to give a contribution?
Know the laws, educate yourself both technically and through traditional education. It's okay to be an electrician and go to college. Know both. Be street savvy and savvy educationally. Know the law. Stay on the side of the law because you can always get your time in court. Don't put yourself in a situation where you're jeopardized and you get either eliminated or thrown into the system. Stay on the side of the law. Present your facts in court and have faith that there will be educated folk who will be able to bring that out. Traditional education is wonderful, but it's okay to have a technical job, to, again, be a carpenter, be an auto mechanic, be a computer tech. Have both. Those old folk back there, they didn't just know how to farm, say, corn. They planted some beans in case the corn didn't work. So I would say definitely I feel education is always the way. But with that, faith. I'm a Christian, my faith in God. And along with that, know what's going on politically in your area. Be a registered voter. If, these folk died in that dead pool. So stand up for what research your candidates, stand up for what you believe in, and vote.
Well, let's say one thing. Tell us about courage. Sometimes we have beliefs, but we won't stand up for our beliefs.
Mm.
Would you have any helps to make us know that we have to be courageous?
Courage and wisdom is a balance. We have to always be ready to lay our lives on the line if need be. But sometimes being quiet is a quiet courage, because you can step back and regroup. You're not retreating, you're advancing in the opposite direction. Let's put it that way. You regroup. And it's okay to sometimes just keep your mouth closed. Don't let everybody know what you know. Say, okay, I'm going to use this information. I'm going to go back. I'm going to regroup. Or I'm not going to. My dad used to say, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. And now I understand that. You don't have to always say anything to have courage. Sometimes silence is an answer. Someone says a question to you, and you look at them like, I know you didn't ask that. I am certainly not that stupid, but you didn't say it. You just look at them. So.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. This has been a tremendous conversation, and thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
And Melissa, tell us what's happening in days to come.
Yes, I will cheat to the camera. So this is, as mentioned, the 150th anniversary of the Hamburg Massacre. And so what's going to be happening at the First Providence Baptist Church, which is the church that was moved, parts of it, and then we have another building that was moved uphill after several floods in what was Old Hamburg. There is going to be a wreath laying at Freedom Bridge on July 8th. This is the date of the massacre. And then the Saturday, which is the 11th, there is going to be a morning program in which our keynote speaker is going to be Representative Clyburn. And then in the evening at 6 p.m., there's going to be a benefit concert to help further memory and commemoration of Hamburg, not just the massacre, but the town and the people, kind of as we mentioned. And then there is going to be another benefit concert on July 24th. And information and tickets, the Hamburg-Cartersville African American Heritage District is on Facebook, so that's posting information, as well as bit.ly/remembering Hamburg. So it's bit.ly/remembering Hamburg will take you to the website. So that's all of our information. And thank you for conducting these interviews, and thank you for being a guest on this.
Thank you all for having me both.
Of course.
Thank you very much.
And we'll see you at the events, and we'll see you all at the events. So thank you.